How's it going, guys? I'm Theo Joe, and today's video is going to be 10 really cool Android apps that you might not have heard of before and should definitely check out. And all of these are going to be free, although there might be premium versions available for them. So enough talking, let's get started. Starting off, we have one called App Hoarder, which is a very simple concept. It takes apps that are normally going to cost money and are on sale for free that day, and will give you a list of them. And you can sort by the number of downloads, the rating. You can filter by ones that only have a minimum number of downloads. So a lot of these obviously are going to be like junk apps that probably no one would want anyway, even if they are free. But every once in a while, you might get one that is a pretty good app and has millions of downloads, and maybe you would have been interested in it and should definitely take advantage of it while it's free, because then you don't have to buy it again. Depending on the day, there's usually a ton of these apps, maybe like 100 or so, and like I said, a lot of them are not going to be very interesting, but it's worth looking through, and especially for games and stuff where, you know, it might not seem that interesting, but if you're really bored one day, it's better than nothing. Next up, we have one called Mindly for mind mapping. And this one, if you don't know what mind mapping is, it basically is just a way to organize your thoughts and connect them together. So you can see here, you basically just create circles or bubbles, and then it connects to other ones where you can take notes and say, oh, I thought about this thing, which connects to this other idea. So I don't know, it could be anything from like a business plan or like for a project where you need to have a table of contents, like an essay, really anything. And you can also add images and icons to change the color so it's easier to understand. You can also zoom way out and it'll show you the entire thing all together. So it's just pretty cool. This might be helpful to some people who have trouble organizing their thoughts or organizing projects they're working on. Worth checking out. Next up, we have Android Auto. You may have probably heard of this one before. It's basically just an interface for Android and certain apps that connect with it that is very useful if you're in a car. So you open it up and then it shows everything in big text, very simple, so it's easy to see and interact with without being distracted too much. And you can basically connect a bunch of different apps to this. So if you have multiple driving and map apps, when you click the directions button, it'll bring up an option for that. And if you want to like use Google Maps and stuff, and there's also one for making a phone call or bring up your favorite contacts, and then another one for music. And you could also integrate Google Assistant with it to control everything, so you don't actually have to press any of the buttons. It's all voice commands. And you can also go into the settings and it'll show you a link to the App Store where any app with Android Auto integration will be listed here. So there might be some like for podcasts or audiobooks or other music apps that work with it. So then you know that these specific apps that are supported by Android Auto are going to be a lot easier to interact with and switch between if you're using them in the car. All right, moving on, we have an app called Automate, and this one is very, very powerful, but also pretty complicated. And the idea is it's kind of like Siri shortcuts or other apps that are basically macros, where it will do a bunch of different commands that you choose in sequence, and these commands can be almost anything. So we can take a look of an example of a pre-made one that does automatic backup every day, and you can see how it shows a big flowchart of all the different commands that is going to be used if you wanted to back something up. So for that one, for example, it'll pick a Google account to back up. It chooses a time. There's a fork to do multiple things at once. It'll show you a notification, copies a directory, and then uploads it to Google Drive. So that's just one example. A simpler example might be the flashlight, where it simply turns on the flashlight based on a command and might show you a notification. So these can be very simple or very complicated. You can look through the list of all the different commands and different functions that might be in different apps. So things like generate random text or whatever. I mean, obviously this is super complicated for me to explain even in this short video, but you might be able to look through it and get an idea of what kind of stuff you can do with it. And it has a reasonable interface if you can figure out the commands for putting them together. You just kind of drag and drop connections, and that's how they work. Up next, this one's good for customization. It's called KWGT Kustom, and the idea is for this one you can create a very customizable widget for either the lock screen or your home screen. And there are a lot of pre-made ones, and you can even customize the pre-made ones and do a lot of stuff with it. Add shapes, add progress bars and stuff in a circle. And this very much reminds me of Rain Meter, an app for the desktop where it's kind of similar. You can add a whole bunch of information, customize it, and there are even apps that you can download from the regular Google Play Store that have pre-made apps. That's probably the more useful case because it doesn't really have that good of a friendly user interface. I mean, even trying to customize a pre-made one, I really couldn't even figure it out. But for people who are really dedicated to this, can probably make some really cool stuff, and then you can download them off the App Store and just find the best ones you like already. All right, on to the next one, Google Opinion Rewards. This one I've talked about before. You probably have heard of this one, but basically you can answer short surveys for Google, and then they'll pay you in Google Play credit. And they could pay you anything from a few cents to like 50 cents or even more. And usually these surveys are not very long. They'll ask you basic stuff like, are you interested in buying this thing in the next few days? Or were you at this location? And I think a lot of this is to determine the accuracy of their services or their AI for predicting stuff, that kind of thing. Obviously, you're not going to get rich based off of this, and the surveys are very wide range in how frequent you get them. You might get once a week, you might get one every couple days, but still, because they take so short of a time, you might find yourself with several dollars after a certain number of surveys, and then you can just spend it on apps that you don't have to pay for. All right, next up, I think we're on to number 7, and this one is called Noonlight. It used to be called Safe Trek, but the idea for this one is it's very useful if you ever find yourself walking through the ghetto or some very dangerous area by yourself. How it works is you put in your information like your phone number, your name, and then you hold down the shield button and you just hold it down until you get to a safe area. And it's kind of like a dead man switch. So you keep holding it down. Whenever you let go, either because you're out of the area or maybe you get mugged or something, you have 10 seconds to enter a pre-made PIN code you choose. And if you don't type it in that 10 seconds, it basically calls the police or calls whatever emergency services you have in your country. And the reason this would be helpful is because say you're walking around, you get mugged or something, you're holding down the thing, you don't have time to take out your phone and call 911 in the middle of being mugged while the criminal's right there. So the idea here is you hold it down. Obviously, if you let go because you're being mugged, then you don't have to do anything extra, and then they don't know that it's gonna call the police or whatever. So then, yeah, I don't know, if you get kidnapped or something, at least they've been notified. So definitely good for peace of mind, especially if you're going through bad areas. Number 8, this one answers the age-old question, where can I stream this one show that I want to watch? And it's called Just Watch. So this app, basically, like I just said, will tell you all the different streaming services that a particular show is available on. So when you first download it, you type in or select which services you use, like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime Video, whatever ones you have. And then when you search for a show, it'll tell you which ones it's available on, including the ones that you have. And you can also browse through different shows that are available on the ones you have, so you don't have to kind of know, oh, I want to watch this show, but oh, it's not available. So pretty useful, and it does have a pretty big number of services to choose from. Obviously the big ones like Netflix and Hulu, like I just said. And it also supports other countries and whatever particular shows are available in that service in that country. Because a lot of times, you know, people say, oh, it's on Netflix, but it might not be in your country. So really cool app. All right, coming near the end, we got a couple more. This next one is a productivity app called Forest, and it's a little bit different than normal timer apps that you may be used to. So you may have an app where it sets a timer that blocks websites and apps for a certain amount of time, but obviously you can bypass it whenever you want. But this one kind of gamifies things. You plant a virtual tree when you set a timer that you want to be productive for that amount of time, and then if you use an app or open something other than the Forest app, it kills the tree. But if you do actually make it through that amount of time, it adds it to like a virtual forest, and then you can kind of accumulate and see, oh, these are the amount of times where I was actually productive, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a incentive for your brain. Oh, I don't want to kill the tree, and then so it's a lot easier to at least bypass little impulses, just look at Reddit or something like that. And there's even apparently a multiplayer mode now where you kind of create a shared forest with friends or family in a group, and if any one person wastes time and opens an app then it kills everyone's trees in their forest. So it's kind of like peer pressure, like don't use an app, I don't want my tree to die, stuff like that. There's even also a Chrome extension, I believe, so you can sync between it if you have the premium version, so that's pretty cool, and you can use it on all your devices. All right, now finally, number 10, this one's a really cool wallpaper app that's a little bit different called Tap It. And the idea behind this one is instead of just giving you a whole bunch of pre-made wallpapers, this one, you generate your own wallpapers using pre-made like algorithmic patterns and colors. And so what happens is you swipe right, it changes the color, and if you swipe left, it changes the pattern of something, and then if you swipe up, it changes like both. And so as you can see, it just kind of procedurally generates random wallpapers based on patterns. You can select which patterns that you don't like, or manually choose patterns to randomly generate with colors. And there is a premium version that has even more patterns, but there is a pretty good selection of ones that are free. So I think that's about it. Let me know in the comments if you have any that I missed, and maybe I'll talk about it in the next video. And if you want to check out some other videos that I made, you can just watch them right here. So thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.